In this episode, we see how times are changing. We also join a few rail fans and how much fun it can be. We do a little bit of operating, watch a few roll-bys, and check out an overall train that's pretty impressive. An operator pick-me-up.
Was that wrong?
And a Hiawatha update.
We also check out what the curmudgeon's gripe of the week is this week. Only in this episode of Too the Milwaukee Road.
We're going to take a look at train 940 leaving Humboldt Yard, and it's going to receive SD39 MN&S number 40 on the lead. It's going to be tacked on, and that locomotive is going to have come from Shoreham. That's what we're looking at here. This is Shoreham in the engine facility. The tracks in which that locomotive worked its way up is on your left-hand side. This is along University Avenue. On your right-hand side, if you go up this side of the yard, just a brief little side note, this is where those trains come out of. When we say they come out of Shoreham, they come out of here, and then they work their way eastward to head up the hill. But this train, this locomotive, is going to be working its way up University, and it's going to find its way across Northtown Yard. So it's working up now on your right-hand side of the screen, and it's going to hit what we refer to as the Foley Y. This is Hilo Junction, which is just off to the right. Central Avenue is just up and to our right. But we've got ourselves going across over the top of Northtown Yard. It's going to work its way all the way over to Humboldt, which we're going to join Bob, Frank, and Greg right now. It's not just Bob. Rail fanning is a little bit more fun when you got others with you, as we'll find out in today's clip. Let's see SD40 back onto the train and listen to some of the commentary.
Hi, Bob. Oh, you got your microphone on?
That thing really gets on the front of these a lot.
You know, he's listening to everything you say.
Is it really?
Look at him laugh. Can you hold that thing steady while you're giggling, Bob?
It was a great shot that Greg captured of number 40 in her new colors as 6240.
What's in those tanks?
That'd be glycol.
Glycol is a chemical compound. Glycol of any class of organic compounds belonging to the alcohol family. In the molecule of a glycol, two hydroxyl groups are attached to two different carbon atoms. The term is often applied to the simplest member of the class, ethylene glycol. Do you know what glycol is not used for? Is it A, polyurethane, B, brake fluid, C, cosmetics, or D, nuts?
I'll punch you in the nut if you say glycol one more time. If you've not listened to the Crossing Gate podcast, it's some endless model railroad dribble worth listening to.
I think William should kick it off, being that he knows more about elevator industry, and then, we can pick his comments apart.
Yeah, Charles, he's full of shit. Yeah, okay, I'm in for that.
I like
Here's why you're wrong.
Who said that?
I think the curmudgeon said that. If you're not familiar with Dave Hamilton's railroad, he's often on the podcast. This is kind of a look at the railroad that he has. It is the CB&Q circa 1970.
Is that correct?
According to Mr. Hamilton, it is. This is Dave here in the red giving the crew a briefing. My dad's sitting in the chair and a few other crew members on the right-hand side. Guess who can't wait for this session to start?
Stoolman?
That's right, Mr. GN in 1970. Hello.
70s.
We pulled the Winona job, which is a fun little job because you're off in your own room. Dave used to have an S-scale railroad that he converted into this portion of his railroad, obviously an HO now, but some cool sights and vignettes on the railroad itself. I often found myself rail fanning.
Was that wrong? Should I not have done that?
If you don't rail fan, you're not really taking in the full experience. Shrink yourself down and take yourself back to the 70s.
Well, you didn't have to say it like that.
Okay, the 70s aren't that bad. Well, maybe in Daniel's eyes, he's a narrow gauge modeler. I mean, how cool is that?
Does that guy look like a narrow gauge modeler?
Nonetheless, check out the Crossing Gate podcast to keep updated on these type of operating opportunities that do come up.
You're listening to The Crossing Gate, the official podcast of the Twin Cities Division of the National Model Railroad Association. The topics and discussions are about the world's greatest hobby, model railroading.
Ops.
Do you know where the central of Minnesota is located? Joe does. He's the layout owner.
Hello.
If you've never heard of the central of Minnesota, that would be because
It's a railroad of lies.
this railroad has been created by Joe Binish. He does a wonderful job. There is a layout tour of this railroad, but we had the opportunity to go operate it recently. And as fun as operations are, the entertainment is more had with the individuals that are there. Now, these are the alley jobs. On the left-hand side is 3rd Street. On the right-hand side is 4th Street. And I don't know if you can get more guys crowded in the corner, but these three are going to try.
My wife says it's tiny. Oh, it doesn't look that small.
Is that a beer can tank?
Getting to know one another is one of the fun things about operations.
Even if it means invading their personal space. Watch your caboose.
This railroad is one of the most fun to run, in my opinion, because it's cool to be able to spectate and look at all the custom cars. One of the most difficult jobs on hand is what Fran's doing here, and that's the yard master. It's key to have good operators in key positions. When operating, don't forget to take in the scenes around you. Pay attention to your surroundings, but appreciate the environment.
And don't knock the tower on the ground.
This guy's done that in the past. While he's here working 3rd Street, the car's all jacked around. He's not even sure why it's that way. Actually, I was trying to block this train and sort my cars out. I end up sorting them by locations. The car cards look a little scrambled, but believe me, there is a method to the madness. As we move forward, we'll take a look at just this little run-by. HH660 number 16 has a lot of work it's got to do, and the one doing that work is Engineer Kurt. He is the one working this particular job. There are a lot of different elements that come into play. I always think one thing that's kind of neat, if you aren't doing your particular job, is to go rail side, drop down to the rail level, and take a look at the train rolling through. I do want to give a big thanks to Joe for inviting us out, because at the end of the day, if you're a layout owner and you're inviting people in, you're giving them the opportunity to get to know one another, but also do a little rail fanning, appreciate your modeling, ask questions, and enjoy the hobby, because it is about the people.
No, it didn't sound like those.
That sounded pretty lame.
Yeah, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
This operating session brought to you by Pepsi Peeps.
Joe's secret to slow operators, hop him up on sugar.
I gotta get the guy in.
Let me suck my gut in.
Sure, the community is great, but one of the top reasons I like operations and model railroading in general, having my dad there. It's definitely entertaining, always good for a laugh.
Rail fanning with Rivard to go.
Like watching a lot of these videos for some of the details. Obviously, you got the MN&S hopper in the background. You've got the SD39 making its joint here. And notice that there's the beacon out on the end porch. This was very common with MN&S power. Kind of cool, kind of unique, and something Sue did away with not too long after this video. Now the crew is on a crew change here. These guys are hopping off, and the new crew will get on. This train will take itself through to Chicago. So it's got another long road ahead of it. It'll go through Stevens Point, eventually again down to Schiller Park. This is a good look of that beacon sitting up on top of the MU housing, so you'll note that it is one of the Strat type beacons that is also used on top of the Sioux Line locomotive. So in terms of a detail as a modeler, it's cool to kind of pick up on some of those things. These guys will make the joint here, get the locomotive all hooked up, and work their way eastward. There's a lot of details involved in hooking the locomotives up. Obviously, you can see the crew member is hooking the chains up between the locomotives. And while doing all this, things can get a little bit boring for Bob, so he ends up documenting some of the other details on the locomotives, one of them being the builder's plate. The builder's plate is like the birth certificate on a locomotive. A lot of guys collect these things. It really just gives the information when the locomotive was made. And we've got Jack and Diane here.
Little ditty about Jack and Diane.
Check those puppies out.
M&S hoppers.
Now the next comment's going to be coming from Greg, and he's 10 years ahead of his comedic timing. Check this out.
Nice ass. Oh, geez, look at the butt on that. Yeah. He must work out.
One of my favorite things is rail fanning Northtown Yard. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and now I can rail fan it in HO scale, as well as check out this blade train. This is a model that was put together by fellow modeler Steve. These things are impressive, the amount of detail that's put into it, as well as time, because these things don't just come out of the box. There's a lot of work that goes into creating these things. They are resin blades with these detailed little slings. It articulates around the railroad beautifully. Now here's something unique. Check these guys out. If those things were full size in real life, we'd definitely our pants at the crossing. American Model Builders is who makes these pieces for these kits. They are available at Walters. It makes for a very cool load, very unique, and definitely an eye catcher. Nice job on building these, Steve. Very cool. This is a more modern look at Humboldt Yard. As you can see, the traffic volume has gone way down in this particular location, but nonetheless, this is where those guys are hanging out. This train will traverse its way down across Camden, over Northtown, past the Columbia Golf Course, and work its way up the hill. These guys are all going to actually head up to Johnson Street, so we'll pop up there as well. This is a modern look. You got the Johnson Street Depot on your left-hand side, or Johnson Street Station. And Frank is actually going to be hanging out right next to Johnson Station as this train works its way up the hill. That horn blast was actually a shout out to the boys standing on the hill here, because this is a silent crossing. As we take a look at 940 working its way up the hill, the other two units that are with number 40 is SU 786 and SU 6603, both SD40-2s. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge how Bob took a lot of the freight cars rolling by. A unique one that we're going to see coming up here is this CP rail. It's kind of a cylindrical hopper. I think he said Sylvan Models made a resin kit of that. Don't quote me on that, but he does have some unique cars that are like that, and you'll see another one coming up right there. It'll cut off here. Now these guys are still hanging out at Johnson Station, waiting for the train to come up the hill. The train continues to roll by, and as it does, one thing to key in on are the different types of hoppers in the train. We're going to see right away here is a PV PS 4427, and we've got a Continental Grain 4750, another 4427 in early Daniels paint, an all gray 4427, 4750, another 4750, and then we've got a ConAgra 4750. A lot of cool elements can be drawn from seeing these cars roll by. Line kind of historically have a manifesty looking train all the time. It doesn't seem that they run this unit consist very often, but as we had seen in our quiz question, there was the glycol tanks. I'm always curious if this cut of cars or this string is actually more glycol cars, which eventually become the glycol unit train. Let's watch these guys cut off, and we'll move on to get the answer to that glycol question. Who would have thought this week's question was going to be a chemistry question? Did you know what glycol is not used for? Instead, D, nuts?
D's nuts?
The nut itself may not contain glycol, but the oil that it had been processed in might. At the tail end of that clip, Bob caught a couple of the MTC buses rolling by at Crawford's ad, and no ad on the side of that one.
It's still rolling in red.
I often get the question, what's going on with the railroad currently? And when I'm recording or putting a season together, not much. It actually gets kind of beat up. Cars get shuffled in places. Cars come out that don't belong here, like this 86-foot auto box. The caboose sits here. These guys don't belong here. Decal's sitting here because it's turned into kind of a workbench. There is a process. I'm having an issue with the division point caboose that hopefully we can get resolved. So that's kind of what's going on here. The critter is just getting kind of kicked around. It does work. It's out here every once in a while. Decal books that we had looked at in the past. And then the Arrowhead models versus Genesis comparison. They're sitting there for a photo that I took. So the white background with the two cars. The Walthers silos that normally are here, those are my test silos. I practice on those to kind of get a look of what I want a silo to look like. So they're currently not here because I took them with me to the modelers meet. A lot of these cars are those custom cars that we had talked about. They're just all sitting here. My dad had got me some fencing for Christmas. This is a very nice fencing, so if you're looking to do fencing, it's a nice product. It will go around the Hiawatha lumber once I get to that point, but I want to finish the scene. Know that my track is working the way I like it. I may actually make an adjustment with some of the track there after some of the operating sessions we've had. So I'm not diving into scenery for that reason. I want to make sure that things are working the way we like them. These silos are in process. They actually were glued together. I've popped them apart because I have a technique that I kind of like, and hopefully we can cover those before the end of the Too the Milwaukee Road season. A couple of vehicles tucked back there that were in one of the episodes. And then the elevator that we're in the process of working on. This is the current status of the head house. It's got a lot going on. It was the temporary, and as I always kind of joke, the temporary has become the permanent. At the end of the day, this is where things are at. People have asked what I'm working on, and this is what I'm working on. I try to turn it out as fast as I can, but at the same time, I try to make sure that the quality doesn't suffer. But if I do have an operating session that might get scheduled or comes up, I do just get this stuff all cleaned up.
Alright, here's the curmudgeon coming at you for the gripe of the week. The gripe of the week this week is about those modelers that are rattling off hopper cars based on their cubic capacity. Like anybody knows that. They're like, oh no, that's a 4427. No, that's a 4750. That's a 4780. It's a 4740. I'm telling you right now, if you rattle off a cubic capacity to me while we're in an op session, I'm going to knock you 470 feet to the other side of this state. I'm telling you right now, when it comes down to it, you just have to say, that is a BN hopper, number 168214. If you rattle off the cubic capacity, you're going to upset the curmudgeon, and that's the curmudgeon's gripe of the week. I'm going to knock you 470 feet to the other side of this state.
A big thanks to everybody that watches to the end, that has hit like, hit subscribe, as well as made comments in the past. It's those actions that help share this content, so if you haven't checked out other episodes, feel free to do so. You can also check out the tour of the GN in 1970, as well as the past episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s.
I'm going to knock you 470 feet to the other side of this state.